I hail from Washington, which was my native town. Boston was my political town, but the Vineyard has always been my spiritual home. When I needed to come back, to find myself, to relax and to think and to write and to do things that I was able to do in my life, they all have their genesis here in Martha's Vineyard, and particularly Oak Bluffs, where I lived for so many years. When I came to Massachusetts, I came to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. It was the worst segregated, discriminated against army at that time. It was the national policy. The military forces were segregated. They were all segregated. And World War II, in my opinion, was inevitable, but it wasn't a good war, but it was inevitable. So even at my level, which is a low level, my soldiers, we wanted to be there. We wanted to fight. And as Negro soldiers, we wanted to do our share. But the army was segregated, as I said, and blatantly segregated. And they didn't want us to do combat because they didn't feel that Negroes had either the wisdom or the strength or the courage to enter into combat. Well, I couldn't accept that. I rejected that right as a young boy. And the Negro press and organizations such as the NAACP were clamoring back at home to send us into combat. Think about that, send us into combat to fight for a country that did not give them freedom, justice, equality, or opportunity. But they were proud and they wanted to be a part of it with the hope that when they returned to the country, that things would have been different. When we returned, things, if anything, were worse. So that was very difficult. Discrimination was still blatant. There was still the colored and white toilets in all the government buildings. Negro women couldn't go down to department stores and try on hats. We still couldn't sit at the counter at a 10-cent store. Worse, to me, means there was sort of a bitterness that was beginning to become confrontational. I first came to Martha's Vineyard 1949 with my wife and our newborn child. And we stayed with Lionel and Edna Linsey in Oak Bluffs. I had been elected first vice president of the NAACP, and he was president. And he invited me down here. He took a quick tour around. I just thought I'd found heaven on earth. It was the first vacation I'd taken since I came home from the war in 46. It was idyllic. I loved the wildflowers. I used to pick the wildflowers in the dump, tomatoes at the dump, because they grew out there so expensively. And the flying horses, which, every father and mother experienced. I always said it cost me more for the flying horses than it did for the property I bought at the time. The bandstand concerts I delighted in. I used to go over to the cottages and the old campgrounds, the tabernacle. And in later years, I got somewhat active in the restoration of that when I came up here. When I got into politics, I used to have big meetings at the tabernacle. As I said, the Episcopal Church, to walk along the seawall. My mother and I used to sit on the seawall, eat ice cream, and see the moon come up over the water. South Beach, the dunes. I could go on and on. I could name so many places. I enjoyed all the towns, though at that time some of the clubs were segregated. Couldn't join the country club. And that's when I bought the property on Nashawina Park in 1958. And I bought it because I had a home, mainly to have a place for gathering for our friends. It was a meeting place because we couldn't go to the country club.